Let's look at the second set of questions for Mountains of Ice, which is summary completion. So for summary completion type of questions, remember these are good to read before you read the passage because they contain information that's in the passage. So skim read before the passage. And you can even try to guess the answer that can come into the spaces, because sometimes the answers are very logical. So just by looking at the sentence, it becomes clear what word or what kind of words can fit into the space. So try to predict the words that can complete the sentences. Now, with this type of question, usually the answers are coming from one paragraph or just one section of the reading passage. So one trick that you can use is try to find one of the answers. It doesn't have to be the first answer in the summary completion. It can be the third or the fourth answer, as long as you're sure that it's a correct answer. When you find one correct answer, then you can look before or after to try to skim read in the passage for the other answers. So find one answer and use it as a reference point for the other answers. When you find all of the answers and you feel comfortable and confident that you completed the summary, it's always a good idea, if you have some time, to check the summary and just quickly skim read it again, so make sure that the answers you chose make sense. And of course, when you do this, look for the word form. So what are you using in the blank? Are you using an adjective? Are you using a noun? Are you using a verb? And look at the words that come before and after the blank, because those will help you to make sure that you have the correct word and the correct word form in the blank, okay? So check your answers and pay attention to word form. And the way, again, you do this is by looking at the words that come before and after. So look at the words before and after. All right, so let's have a look at our question example. Again, this is coming from www.aehelp.com. So to do more questions like this and for more practice, visit us there. All right, let's have a look at the questions and the answers, and I'll show you how you can apply these strategies. So I would skim read this before the passage, the sinking of the Titanic. Because there was no international group which monitored icebergs in 1912, it was the sole responsibility of the something to make sure there were no icebergs in the ship's path. Maybe a captain, maybe a sailor, maybe a lookout, something like that. The chief reason the iceberg wasn't detected was of the sea that night. Because of this, there were no waves crashing against the iceberg, making it difficult to spot. The captain swerved, but the iceberg scraped the side of the ship, ripping something of the ship maybe the side of the ship or the hull of the ship, the frame of the ship. Things should have been fine nevertheless, but the watertight compartments were poorly designed, and once the water was in a few compartments, it was able to something into all the others. I can see that here probably a verb is needed. This was a major engineering defect which resulted in the eventual sinking. Alright, now when we look at the passage, we realize that it's really one paragraph which is talking about the sinking of the Titanic. So we can look just at this paragraph to try to answer this question. And again, you should try to answer some of these without looking back at the passage if possible.
The most famous iceberg in history is undoubtedly the one which eventually sunk the English ship Titanic off the coast of Newfoundland in 1912. At that point in time, there was no central group which monitored iceberg activity. Ships relied on lookouts to spot the icebergs. For the Titanic, the unfortunate attitude was that any iceberg big enough to do damage to the ship would be seen in time. This attitude was, of course, catastrophically wrong. The main reason it failed was the remarkable calmness of the water that ill-fated night. The easiest way to spot an iceberg from afar is to see waves crashing up against it. But on the night the Titanic sank, there were no such helpful waves. For all intents and purposes, the iceberg was invisible until it was too late. The captain swerved at the last minute, but as the side of the ship scraped across the iceberg, the hull of the ocean liner tore open. Things still may have been fine had it not been for the poorly designed watertight compartments. It turns out that when too many compartments were affected, the water was simply able to spill over to all the other compartments. This was an engineering defect that contributed to the Titanic sinking.
So the first answer for question number 6 we will find near the beginning part of the paragraph, and we realize that it's paraphrased and the answer is lookouts. So number 6, the answer is lookouts. And when we look at this word, we can see that the first part is look and out. So this must be some type of a noun which describes a person who is on a ship and looking for danger in the water. And we can see from the article the, which comes before the space number 6, that this is a noun. It should be a noun, so lookouts make sense in the context of this sentence. And then we keep going and we read for number 7. So again, remember lookouts, it's a noun. We see this because before it, it's the coming. And again, when we read it, it makes sense. So number 7, when we continue to read, we realize that it has to be an adjective that comes here, because it's something of the sea that night. Sea is a noun, so this word describes this noun, sea, so of the sea. And when we look at the passage, we can find that the adjective used to describe the sea is the word calmness. Calmness meaning quiet or silent. It's a flat ocean. All right, we continue on and we look for our second noun. Again, for question 8, we can see that it has to be a noun because before it we see the word the. And when we look at the passage, we again see that this sentence is paraphrased, and the word that we find fits into this blank is hull. All right, so now we need to look for number 9. And again, we look at this, so it was able to something into all the others. So we realize that this is a verb. And again, the reason we know this is because of able to. So we realize this is a verb. Again, this is coming later now near the end of the paragraph because the questions come in order. So we realize that the verb which is here is spill. Spill means to pour out. So once I have put in all of these words into the blanks, again, it's a good idea to just quickly skim read the paragraph if you have some extra time to make sure that your answers make sense. So, reading it with the answers. Because there was no international group which monitored icebergs in 1912, it was the sole responsibility of the lookouts to make sure that there were no icebergs in the ship's path. The chief reason the iceberg wasn't detected was the calmness of the sea that night. Because of this, there were no waves crashing against the iceberg, making it difficult to spot. The captain swerved, but the iceberg scraped the side of the ship, ripping the hull of the ship. Things should have been fine nevertheless, but the watertight compartments were poorly designed, and once the water was in a few compartments, it was able to spill into all the others. This was a major engineering defect which resulted in the eventual sinking. It all looks good, so I'm confident. I make sure that it's in my answer sheet, and I go on to the next question.